Good morning to you. It is Saturday, November 19th. I'm Abby Huntsman. Donald Trump looking to unify the party by meeting with one of his harshest critics, Mitt Romney. Could the former governor actually end up part of the Trump administration? We are covering that today.
And what does the media think about President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General Jeff Sessions?
He is a fringe choice.
He has been dogged with decades-old allegations of racism.
So there are fundamental concerns among Democrats about Jeff Sessions.
Sure sounds scary, but did anyone bother to check the senator's record? They talked about when they go low, we go high. Not this time.
Maybe they should check that. And Vice President-elect Mike Pence goes out for a well-deserved night on the town, only to get a lecture from Hillary's friends on Broadway. In on this. It's 7 o'clock in Manhattan. We're trying to make 7 o'clock in Manhattan great again. Mornings are better with friends.
We are trying to make 7 o'clock.
Yeah, you better believe
Great
it.
again.
This show flies by.
Yeah. It's already great again.
Everyone's talking about this Hamilton story, so we're going to get to that just in moments. And I know our audience, they've sent in a lot of their comments.
Oh, my goodness.
I still can't get over what happened. You know, Mike Pence just trying to have a nice night out with his family. We're going to get to that in moments.
Indeed.
But there's a lot going on in politics. Still speculation about the cabinet. Ed Henry's here. Good to see you, Ed, from Washington. Let's start with this, though. President-elect Donald Trump keeping up his busy schedule as he continues to fill out his administration. And today he's got a meeting with former rival Mitt Romney at his golf course in New Jersey.
That's right. Garrett Tenney is live in Washington, D.C. with more on Romney's possible appointment. Good morning, Garrett.
Good morning, Abby, Ed, and Pete. You know, most people will remember Mitt Romney was one of the most prominent members of the Never Trump movement, even after Mr. Trump had won the nomination. And now he could become President-elect Trump's Secretary of State. Sources close to the transition team tell us the two men will meet this afternoon at the Trump National Golf Course, which is fitting considering how over the years both men have worked out hundreds of business deals on the greens. Romney is one of a number of people being considered for that high-profile position, but we've been told he does command a lot of respect from the Trump team for the predictions he made during the 2012 presidential race about the world stage, particularly about the growing threat of Russia at the time. This meeting, which has come as a bit of a surprise to many, is what the Trump team says this new administration will be about, working with and receiving counsel from allies, rivals, and those on the other side of the aisle. Now, apart from Romney, Mr. Trump has at least 7 other meetings scheduled for today as he continues to look at candidates to fill out the rest of his cabinet. Abby, Ed, Pete.
Boy.
Thank you, Garrett.
Indeed. I think a lot of people, they seem surprised, but if you look at Donald Trump's track record, we shouldn't be all that surprised that he's meeting with Mitt Romney. This is a guy who wants consensus, who behind the scenes wants to hear from divergent viewpoints, and so it's a good thing to see.
It is. It's good to see them breaking bread together, but I think what people are talking about is, you remember just months ago when Mitt Romney did lay out that big speech, not only did he not endorse Mr. Trump, but he actively campaigned to make sure he wasn't the nominee. I mean, he called him dangerous for this country. I have no doubt that Mr. Trump, knowing his style a little bit, Ed, he's probably going to make him squirm a little bit today and remind him of the things that he said and what he called him. And I'm sure they'll make amends, they'll come together, and ultimately he's going to want to hear some of the things that Mitt Romney feels need to happen for this country.
And I think there are some people in the transition team that I've spoken to who think the idea that Romney will get Secretary of State is an exaggeration, that it might just be kind of, let's break bread, let's make peace, but not actually Secretary of State. Another interesting kind of bit of speculation that's out there is, could Romney head the VA? Because he's somebody who's known for fixing things. Look what he did with the Olympics. You know all about that in Salt Lake City, right? And so if you think about what a mess the VA is right now, and Pete has been documenting this as well or better than anyone, the bottom line is, what a legacy for Mitt Romney and for Donald Trump if their administration could finally fix the VA.
Exactly. You need someone that's willing to take on the bureaucracy, speak honestly, know how to turn it around. Absolutely. Accountability, give them choice, you know, someone like
someone that represents our veterans more than anything else. That's the most important thing.
Well, and Donald Trump ran on that. He ran on the VA in a way no one else has. So there's an amazing moment there to turn around an institution that's utterly famous.
Jeff Sessions is someone who's been nominated. He was really the first senator to stick his neck out there for Donald Trump. And so you knew he would get something big. Immediately, he he's labeled a racist
he's been asked to be the Attorney General.
The Attorney General.
For Mr. Trump. And as you said, he's been loyal to him from the very, very beginning. He's been helping, advising behind the scenes.
New York Times has a blistering editorial saying, as Attorney General, he will not protect voting rights. This will be the worst thing for African Americans. And Luis Gutierrez, who's the Democratic congressman from Illinois, said, quote, if you have nostalgia for the days when blacks kept quiet, gays were in the closet, immigrants were invisible, he says, and women stayed in the kitchen. Senator Jefferson Beauregard Sessions is your man. Now,
you're a good reader, Ed.
I didn't read it as well last time, so I wanted Beauregard. I mean, that is his middle name.
It's not just Democrats, though, Pete. It is the media now that is jumping on this narrative. And why are we so quick to throw the word racist around?
Yeah. Because
that's
it's what
what
they do.
Today.
If you don't want to take on the policies, if you don't want to have an argument about illegal immigration, if you don't want to have that discussion, then you've got to make them a racist and you got to yell it from the rooftop. And that's exactly what the media is doing. Take a listen to this montage.
Senator Jeff Sessions has accepted Trump's offer to be his AG, but he will now face questions about his record on civil rights.
But he has been dogged with decades-old allegations of racism.
So there are fundamental concerns among Democrats about Jeff Sessions and sort of how he would tackle some of these issues, racial issues, issues of hate crimes.
If you're going to get a couple of loyalists that have said some crackpot things in the past, you sure as hell better have some very steady hands at state, at defense, and at Treasury, or this goes into a full-blown meltdown.
Meltdown. Talk about a meltdown. The front page of the New York Times. Trump selects loyalists. Oh my God, loyalists! He's selecting people who are loyal to him. Pete and I were talking about this before.
Should we put our Fox News alert?
Yeah, what president has not picked people loyal to him?
Let me think. I'm going to pick all the people who opposed me and put them in my cabinet, who aren't going to implement the policies. If you're a conservative who believes that we need to control our border and illegal immigration, then you love this pick by Jeff Sessions, and the media is going nuts. But what they're not talking about is, wait, as U.S. Attorney General in Alabama, he filed several cases to desegregate Alabama schools. Yeah. This is the racist Jeff Sessions, as well as prosecuting a Klansman, the son of a Klansman, who led the state, who killed a black teenager, and he made sure that he got the death penalty. This is not a racist man.
I'm going to keep saying this. I think the Democrats got spanked last week in the polls, but they've got nowhere else to turn.
Sure.
And so when they see something that they can hammer on with one of his appointees, they're going to run on that, and the media's going to say, we're going to go with it too. Well, that sounds like a good headline.
And so Jonathan Allen, I know him, he's a journalist in Washington. He is now at Roll Call, where I used to work many years ago, and he wrote a column before Sessions was picked.
It's a preemptive assault.
A preemptive assault, basically saying he's a racist. He said if he was picked for Pentagon Secretary, he might decide to resegregate the military, even though that was overturned by Harry Truman in 48 or something like that.
Resegregate the military. This is what they're hypothesizing.
So then he decides to go up against our own Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, I don't know who that guy is.
He may not want to do that. He's a tough debater. Take a listen to how this all played out.
If you look at the history and the pattern of Jeff Sessions, he said things over the course of time that
you said something really specific. You said he was endorsed by Stormfront. But I'm sure he would disavow that immediately. So why is that fair to write that?
He hasn't disavowed it that I know of.
Oh, so you think he agrees with Stormfront? Is that what do you have evidence for that?
I don't know.
Can you name, in the 20 years he has served, 19 as senator, a single instance where he's mistreated someone on the basis of his race? Ever. One.
He was complaining about the idea that that the state of Alabama was going to have to feed and clothe children.
Okay, but
do you think
so that makes him
that's
racist?
Such an awful?
I mean, that's your example of his racism?
In 1986, he called the NAACP un-American.
Really?
I'm just glad to find out where that guy works now. Because last Sunday I tuned in. I was looking for Tucker.
Yeah.
I saw this beautiful anchor, and then and Abby was here too. Abby, the beautiful anchor was here along with Pete. And Tucker's now doing the 7 o'clock show, and he's doing what journalists do best, which is saying, you wrote a column saying this senator is a racist. Give me one example. It was painful because for 7 or 8 minutes, Jonathan Allen could not name one thing where he's racist. Now, Jeff Sessions said controversial things, 70s and 80s, and he's going to have to account for that in these confirmation hearings. But to call someone a racist and not have a specific example is outrageous.
Well, speaking of calling people a racist, just another thing that happened that we talked about at the top of the show was the cast and crew of the Broadway show, a very famous Broadway show, Hamilton, that's been very successful. I think you've seen it. I have not, but would love to.
Look, it's a great show. It's a great show, and that's the reason why Vice President-elect Mike Pence wanted to go with his family last night, spend a nice Friday night out, thinking this is going to be maybe an hour or two away from some politics to enjoy life. But guess what? It got
Oh, my goodness. That sanctimonious, dripping self-righteousness is exactly why Donald Trump got elected.
Well, Hillary Clinton went to that play a number of times when she was running for the presidency. She got standing ovations. There, she's getting hugs behind stage. You can just see the difference in reaction to both of these folks showing up. You know what, though? This is a great play, and it's a great story about Alexander Hamilton's life. And so I do think there are a lot of positives to be learned from going to the show. It's frustrating that they had to go down that path and say some of those things.
Let's get a quick viewer comment, because people it's pouring in. Email from Sherry. I find it distasteful that anyone would take the mic on Broadway to disparage a man they do not know. Apparently, they don't appreciate the journey for democracy they sing about. I've had tickets for months. Now I don't want to go.
And an email from Khalid saying, I think the treatment of the VP-elect was unprofessional and out of line. It's the elitist mentality that got everyone sick and tired of the norm.
Yeah, this is an email from Bart saying, get over yourselves, actors. Your job was to perform in order to entertain, not to lecture. I'm sure the new administration will perform their jobs a lot better than you did your job last night. You can't help but wonder if it were... even President Obama sitting in that crowd. That never would have happened.
Right, if he had gotten a blue to be like, oh my God, what a disrespect. How could you disrespect the president?
Yeah.
Here's our vice president-elect. Everyone's vice president-elect.
Isn't there a certain level of...
No, not there.
That was his wife.
Not there.
I mean, Ed, you've worked in Washington for a long time. Isn't there a certain level of respect, regardless of what party you associate with, that when you are elected president or vice president here, isn't there that level of respect that everyone...
There are a lot of Democrats who feel that President Obama did not get that respect, and so maybe they're going to fire back now, and I think it's going to be pressure on the president-elect and the vice president-elect to bring people together. But you go to a Broadway show, you don't expect a lecture.
Well, no, and just like all the celebrities that try to release all those videos and tell us all how to vote, people don't care.
And all the celebrities endorsed Hillary Clinton, and she didn't win.
Keep singing, keep acting, keep jumping around in tights. That's what you do well, not politics.
Yeah, sometimes the best revenge, as you mentioned earlier, Ed, is winning.
Right. Well, I mean,
nothing you can say to that.
Just think about, I remember LeBron James endorsing Hillary Clinton, having a big event in Ohio. She lost Ohio, right? All of these states, Philadelphia for Pennsylvania, Bruce Springsteen, big concert, the last night of the campaign. They didn't win Pennsylvania. So the celebrity factor, in the end, let people just enjoy themselves.
Sometimes if it's trending on Twitter, it doesn't really speak to what's actually going on. Maybe.
Maybe. Shocker. All right. The mainstream media, meanwhile, immediately pouncing on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's new position on the Trump team. But that's not the whole story. Lieutenant Colonel...
Welcome back. We've got some quick headlines here. President Obama arriving in Peru overnight, the last stop of his final world tour as president. Later today, he'll meet with leaders of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, a trade agreement not expected to survive under President-elect Trump. And House Republicans, get this, Republicans begging Nancy Pelosi to remain as the Democratic minority leader, thanking her, sarcastically you may think, for toxic comments that she made like this about Obamacare.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Well, that was a doozy. The NRCC officially endorsing her, saying her leadership would be disastrous for Democrats after Republicans picked up nearly 50 seats in the House since 2010. She is being challenged by Ohio Representative Tim Ryan. Interesting endorsement. Ed?
Interesting indeed. Thanks, Pete. Democrats doubling down, slamming President-elect Donald Trump's most recent administration picks as, you guessed it, racist, and now urging him to reconsider the appointment of Senator Jeff Sessions. Watch this.
Senator Sessions was vetted for a federal judgeship several years ago. And at that time, it became quite public that he made jokes about the KKK, that he made racial slurs, used racial slurs, that he said things that caused not just Democrats, but people in his own party, Republicans, to say this is a man who is not fit to be a federal judge.
Strong words from Senator Elizabeth Warren. Despite that continued criticism, Sessions is still getting some bipartisan support from senators like Joe Manchin, the Democrat from West Virginia, and it's still expected he'll get confirmed, though we'll have to see how it all plays out. Here to discuss, Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha and senior writer for Opportunity Lives, political analyst Carrie Sheffield. Chuck, I wanted to start with you because I wonder what happened in the campaign to this whole idea that Michelle Obama had the refrain, when they go low, we go high. What happened?
Well, you have a lot of Democrats who got a lot of scars on them. I think Abby said it good a while ago. We got our you-know-what handed to us in an election. You got a lot of people out there who are mad. Now, as Americans, we should hold everybody that he appoints accountable, whether they're from the left or the right. That's our job. And if he said racist things in his past, it should be brought to the forefront. But it should also be mentioned that he's one of the few Republicans that voted for Eric Holder. In all of the research that you do, you should be out there talking and looking at this is your government and making sure they're held accountable. All the name calling is going to happen, no matter who he's going to pick. But I think right now we should be business as usual as far as who we're going to have there.
Carrie, what do you think about all that?
Well, I think Pete just said it best. The fact that the Democrats are hugging Nancy Pelosi says that they are going to stay in the minority. The fact of the matter is that Obamacare is the reason the Tea Party was created, which is the reason that Donald Trump will be our president. So if you want to take and keep that hard left going, keep what you're doing, folks. I'm just giving you some free advice.
Now, Chuck, obviously, the comments that Senator Jeff Sessions made decades ago, we should point out, when he was in Alabama, long before he was in the United States Senate, it's going to come up at his confirmation hearing. He's going to have to answer for it, no doubt about it. But look at what happened in the last campaign with Hillary Clinton. Watch.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up.
So, Chuck, I just keep hearing now, President-elect Trump, Democrats are saying he's got to change the things he did in the campaign when he won. Meanwhile, Democrats went to this racist label again and again, lost the election, and now it seems to me you're going right back to it.
You know, during the campaign, it was a long campaign season. As you know, I worked for Bernie Sanders, and there was a lot of name calling on both sides. I remember crooked Hillary and lying Ted and all of the above. What people need to realize now is that when you win elections, you get to pick whoever you want to pick. And for those 46 million Americans out there that sat home who was either mad at crooked Hillary or didn't like crooked Donald, now you're getting what you paid for. Elections matter, and when you get to win, you get to pick who you want. But as Americans, we get to hold them accountable, but this is how elections work.
And Carrie, final thought from you about what Donald Trump's incoming administration is going to have to do with the onslaught they're going to be facing.
Well, I didn't agree with everything that Donald Trump said, but he has been a class act this entire time. So, Chuck, please, just free advice to you guys, tone it down, realize that everyone who voted for Donald Trump is not those horrible labels that Hillary Clinton put on them. The fact of the matter is that people are upset. People have lost their jobs. Obamacare is spiking insurance costs. There's so many problems with Democratic governance, and the fact of the matter is the party has taken a sharp left turn. If Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are your new faces, then you're going to be in the permanent minority.
Well, we're going to have to see, to quote that wise sage again, Abby Huntsman, to see who has their you-know-what handed to them in the days ahead. I think Chuck already did that. Thanks for doing that, Chuck. Rosha, Carrie Sheffield, we'll have you back soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
It started as a media meltdown on election night.
Arguably a landslide for Hillary.
Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
He's going to lose by a landslide. We could be talking landslide.
Now, the mainstream media can't take back these poor predictions, and they don't appear to be backing down from the bias on President-elect Trump's transition moves either, with headlines calling it chaotic and in turmoil and in a state of disarray. Here to react is Deputy Opinion Editor for the Washington Times, Kelly Riddell. Kelly, thanks for joining me this morning.
Good morning.
Why can't they hold back, and why are they so ferocious in declaring it disarray?
Well, I think that the mainstream media has a preconceived notion. They want to paint Trump out and the Trump administration out as being chaotic and disarray. CNN had a headline last night saying it was a roller coaster ride. The Economist today has a headline that says most transitions are chaotic, but Trump's is especially so. So they just want to drive home this narrative that basically reaffirms their notion that a Trump presidency would be a disaster.
Yeah, but there have been these mini mea culpas, right? The New York Times kind of tried it. Some folks on CNN have kind of tried it. Is it possible? I mean, can you rebaptize yourself as some sort of independent journalist, or can they just not help themselves?
I don't think they can help themselves. I mean, some of the more helpful assessments is comparing this administration to past transitions. And CBS did this in a brief story. You know, Barack Obama at this time, when in 2008, he hadn't named anybody, any cabinet position yet in the first 2 weeks after he won the election. The only staff position he named was his chief of staff of Rahm Emanuel. And then quickly came David Axelrod as a chief advisor.
Yes.
He did not name a cabinet pick until the end of November, and that was the Treasury Secretary.
Kelly, you're perfect. We'll put David Axelrod's tweet up very quickly. He tweeted about that, saying by this time in 2008, we hadn't made any major appointments, and I don't remember being criticized for it at all. So we're giving him plenty of time, but Donald Trump's got to rush right away. Here are the appointment chart. You mentioned the historical data, which is, you know, history matters a little bit and should as we look at it. Look at that from Nixon to Trump. How many appointments had been made at certain weeks into being president-elect? Doesn't look like Donald Trump's all that far ahead. In fact, it looks like he's ahead of the curve.
He's ahead of the curve. George H.W. Bush was ahead of the curve, and it looks like Donald Trump's ahead of the curve as well. I mean, if you go back to 1992 with Bill Clinton, he named a 48-person transitional team, and it was a mess. He made his big cabinet picks the week of Christmas. On the 22nd of December, he made his pick for Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, and then on Christmas Eve, he said who he wanted to be AG and Commerce Secretary. And so this is the end of December, and on Christmas week is when he made his big
Kelly,
his
think
big
about
decisions.
that. Christmas Eve. Imagine if Donald Trump was doing it. I mean, they would go apoplectic.
The press corps would be insane. Yeah.
No, they can't. And they're going insane because he goes out for dinner at the 21 Club. Apparently, that means they're the least transparent administration in history. They can't help themselves, and you're exposing it. Kelly, thank you very much for your expertise.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. Are you one of the millennials that's been protesting our next president? That's not protesting, by the way. That's rioting. What if you were told, though, that there's a good chance that instead of being a rioter in 4 years, you might be voting for his re-election? Stick around, and we'll explain why. And a big story for the future president. The meetings he will have and some of the surprise...
And more than they even think.
Let's ask the editor of Red Alert Politics, Ron Meyer, joining us this morning from Washington. Good morning to you, Ron.
Morning.
Good morning.
You know, the millennials were pretty fired up about Bernie Sanders, and for you to say now, well, you know, Donald Trump will help them, how do you back it up?
Well, here's the thing. Not only did a lot more millennials support Donald Trump, but here's the thing. You know, you can go out there and protest whenever you want, but the truth is you probably should be protesting actions, not just words that the media is reporting and reporting incorrectly, because guess what? The policies are actually going to help these people that are protesting. If you look at every single issue that affects their pocketbooks, and frankly, social issues too, Donald Trump is going to be with them and helping them, especially when it comes to the things that are affecting them most, whether it's college costs, whether it's health care prices going up through the roof for them, or taxes too.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit. Healthcare, as you're mentioning, it's a big one, an area that could benefit millennials. For example, axe the individual mandate, remove price controls. Talk about why millennials should care about this, why this could improve their lives.
Yeah, so for healthcare, Obamacare actually put price controls that makes young people pay more to subsidize the rest of the system. So young people with very little disposable income trying to start their careers, obviously the headlines for the last 8 years have been that there's a lot of underemployment. Obamacare put paying everyone else's higher premiums onto them. And then further, the individual mandate has a fine on there if you don't get healthcare. So you have these poor millennials who are just trying to start and claw their way through life, having either pay a gigantic fine or to pay for health care they can't afford.
You wonder why they didn't sign up for Obamacare.
Right. And let me get to college costs quickly, because I mentioned Bernie Sanders. He was talking about free college. Now you're saying privatizing student loans, increasing federal student loan pay cap. Some Trump policies will help millennials. Why?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So here's the thing. You know, free college doesn't change the cost model. So higher education is going to continue rising their tuition, and it just depends on who pays for it. The great thing about Trump's plan is it actually brings college costs down by making higher education accountable. It does it by one key way that I mean, there's a few aspects to it, but one big thing is it actually puts colleges on the hook for student loans with the students and with the loan institutions. So they have a real incentive to actually make sure their kids have jobs when they graduate, to actually make sure that tuition isn't really through the roof.
And finally, Ron, taxes. I mean, that's a huge one.
Yeah, taxes is totally huge because guess what? Not only are your taxes going to go down, millennials, but also the person that's going to hire you, their taxes are going down, so they have more reason to hire you and to increase your pay and to reinvest in the workforce.
Well, Ron Meyer, thanks for all that. We'll see whether millennials buy in.
Hopefully they're up early this morning watching.
We got to wake them up. Get the alarm clock.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Donald Trump, meanwhile, looking to unify his party by meeting with one of his harshest critics, Mitt Romney.
Shows on Channel 114, plus every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7, Channel 115.
We now know that President-elect Trump has offered retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn the post of National Security Advisor inside the White House. And there's rampant speculation by the mainstream media over exactly who he is and what he stands for. But what do people who actually have worked with General Flynn have to say about him?
Well, here to weigh in, a man who knows Flynn, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Colonel, good to have you here this morning. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good to be on. Thank you. Good to be on. Hey, Ed.
All right, so you do know him personally. What we've heard about him and what we sort of know is that he's disruptive, right? Especially when it comes to the most important issue that we face, arguably going forward, is ISIS, even getting fired for speaking to Congress about it.
Well, that's the issue, Abby, and thank you for putting it in that term. You know, yeah, he was asked to leave by a man named Jim Clapper, who was resigning rather than do the right thing and do an overlap. And let's remember, Jim Clapper actually lied to the American people on multiple occasions. He politicized the intelligence system. So let's think about this. A man who is disruptive against the very thing which is going to damage our country is not disruptive. It's actually something designed to fix things. And let's be clear on this. Mike Flynn was actually confirmed twice by the Senate for senior intelligence positions to include his position as director of DIA. So I got to tell you, Abby, I have been completely appalled and fascinated in a sick sort of way about him being portrayed as a racist, and him being portrayed as all these vile things. By the way, all by people who are faceless. Nobody's willing to go on the record, and those of us who have been working with him are just looking at this like, what the heck is going on?
And Tony, it's interesting because some of his comments obviously have been all about radical Islam, and he has made no bones about taking that on.
He wrote a book about it. That's right.
Absolutely. And there are Democrats who are going to be looking at his nomination, obviously. It would have been looking, I should say, at his nomination if he had gone for defense secretary. They went instead to an appointment, so they don't have a confirmation hearing. But my point is, they're going to be dogging him every step of the way. And one of those senators is Ron Wyden, who said, quote, his statements about Muslims are profoundly un-American as well as damaging to the fight against terror and national security. His financial entanglements with Russia and other foreign governments are also cause for concern. Now, look, I get you're standing up for him, but you have to admit that since leaving government, he's had some lobbying things where he's making big money, and some of his clients have been controversial.
Let's be clear on this. He has not lobbied. That's one of the things that the folks out there on the left on Team Hillary has been putting out. He had relationships to advise and assist. He's an advisor. Okay. And let's be clear on this again with Russia.
He's making money for consulting.
I get your
absolutely.
Point, absolutely. And then the other issue is Russia. You know, look, he's a freaking intelligence officer. What good would an intelligence officer be if he doesn't actually go out and do intelligence stuff to figure things out? Sure. So, you know, you've got to be out and engaged. Mike Flynn's job before he left government was to actually understand the nap of the earth and how things function. That's not changed. And one of the key things about a Trump foreign policy is having credibility, and credibility especially with the eyes of world leaders. So Mike has that, and that's where this is all going. So, you know, this is again where I've been appalled about the complete slander, I would say. And I'm sorry, Senator Wyden, you know, maybe you ought to read more carefully what exactly General Flynn said about radical Islam. It's not about every person who has the Islamic faith being bad. It's about the fact you have elements within Islam who are using the religion as a vector to attack us. And if we don't actually accept that as a fact, we will see ourselves attacked more and more.
Boy, Abby, this is why we wanted Tony Shaffer, is to sort of get the real skinny. And when he says he's a freaking intelligence officer, I think that's what we wanted. We wanted to know, what is he? And he told us who he is.
Well, there he is. There you go.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, always good to have you here.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right. Big city mayors brushing off the next president's policy on sanctuary cities.
To all those who are, after Tuesday's election, very nervous, you are safe in Chicago. You are secure in Chicago, and you are supported in Chicago.
But what about the legal residents? Are these mayors making their cities less safe for them? A fair and balanced debate.
Major U.S. cities say they will do all they can to protect their illegal immigrant residents from deportation, despite President-elect Donald Trump's vow to withhold federal funding if they do not cooperate.
To all those who are, after Tuesday's election, very nervous. You are safe in Chicago. You are secure in Chicago, and you are supported in Chicago.
I reiterated to him that this city and so many cities around the country will do all we can to protect our residents and to make sure that families are not torn apart.
Well, there you have it. But as these officials defend their sanctuary status, are they ignoring the safety of those who reside in their cities legally? Joining me now for a fair and balanced debate is Democratic strategist Janice Fuentes and newly minted Fox News contributor Rachel Campos Duffy. Thank you both for joining us this morning. Janice, I want to go straight to you. You heard Rahm Emanuel claim that he wants people to be safe in his highest murder rate in the nation's city. Is he making people safer by defending the sanctuary status?
Well, first of all, let's start with the sanctuary name. I think it's really a very bad name to give to a city who's doing this policy.
Well,
because
that's what they call it.
Really, I know, and I'm telling you that I think it misleads to it misleads people to misunderstand what it really means. This is really about resources and community safety. The responsibility of enforcing immigration laws is the federal government's. So what this really means is that the cop on the beat does not have to go around to hunt down people because of immigration status. This is what it really means. And if I witness a crime, I do not have to be scared to come forward because I'm going to be deported simply by saying, listen, I witnessed a crime being perpetrated. This is what this is all about.
Rachel, she claims it's about hunting down illegals. Is that what this debate is about?
I didn't say that.
You said you used the phrase hunting down. You used the phrase hunting down in your answer.
No, I didn't say
Rachel,
that. I said that is a responsibility of the federal government.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, listen, Donald Trump has been very clear that what he is focused on is securing the border and deporting illegals who are felons. And so unless you're a felon, don't worry about it right now. He launched his campaign on this issue. He is not going to back down. He is going to withhold federal funds from those cities that are harboring felons, illegal felons, and he's going to go after them if they don't cooperate. So listen, this is going to happen. They need to adjust to this new political reality. And the truth is, Janice, if you care about the undocumented people in Chicago or any other city who are working hard, then get behind Donald Trump, secure the border, get rid of the felons, and then we can have a real conversation about how to deal fairly and compassionately with those who are here without documentation.
Well, Janice, the irony is also that 80% of the drugs that are infecting the city streets of Chicago come from the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico because our border is wide open. But, Janice, I want to ask you this about the budget, because it can hit Chicago in the wallet really hard. I mean, their city budget is $7.8 billion. $1.2 billion of that are federal grants. That's a huge chunk of the budget. Would Rahm Emanuel really be prepared to look Donald Trump in the eye and say, we won't take your money in order to preserve our sanctuary city?
What is really ironic, Pete, to use your own word, is that Rudy Giuliani, when he was mayor of New York, actually defended the policies of the sanctuary city that New York uses back then and uses still today. The issue about I love to see, listen, what Rachel said, it's true. I want every undocumented criminal immigrant to be deported, absolutely. And anyone in their sane mind will agree with this. We're not safe with having undocumented criminals running around. But I want to make the distinction between being a criminal who is also undocumented and just being an undocumented immigrant.
But is it
There's
not
a big
illegal?
Distinction, and we all agree.
Sure, but
you're
is it not illegal to be here
illegally? Pete. You know, Rachel and I probably agree. There's a big difference, and she just called it. There's a segment of the population that obviously is criminal, and we all agree they need to be deported, correct?
But Rahm Emanuel is not making that distinction. And the bottom line is this. We are a country of laws. Our country works because we all agreed to abide by the law. And we can't have mayors like Rahm Emanuel deciding they don't want to follow the law. And by the way, be careful, liberals. This goes both ways. Do you want red states or red cities deciding they don't want to follow the EPA standards, or they don't want to protect an endangered species that the federal government has declared endangered? I mean, we are a country of laws, and we have to abide by them.
Well, I know, Rachel, but I just want to make sure the mayors of a country do know that we trust them to make the decisions that are best for our large cities. Well, hey, and I trust law enforcement to also make that decision as well.
Donald Trump is serious about enforcing the rule of law. This is really going to be a money where your mouth is type moment, because if $1.25 billion is at stake in Chicago, Rahm Emanuel is going to have to make his choice. Rachel and Janice, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Pete.
You got it.
Protesting the president-elect, like that video you see there, which is actually looting, could soon be a criminal offense. Washington State Senator Doug Erickson is proposing a bill that would create a new crime called economic terrorism for those who protest illegally.
Here with more on the proposal is Washington State Senator Doug Erickson. Senator, thanks for joining us this morning. So tell us about your bill, because rioting, looting, all of those things presumably are already illegal. How far does this bill go, and what does it do?
Yeah, thanks for having me on this morning. So the first thing to be clear about is you have a right to protest. And you can protest Mr. Trump all you want. You can misspell fascism on a sign and carry it around the streets. That's not what we're going after. Well, what we're targeting are the people that take it to the next level. You have a right to protest. You do not have a right to do harm to people or to personal property. And this is intended to protect the citizens of my state and people around the country from those that get out of control, or from the organizers of these protests that get out of control.
What has the response been so far to this bill that you put forward?
Well, it's been amazing. We've gotten response from all over the country. A lot of people misunderstand it. They think it's an assault on the right to protest, right, which it's not. It's basically just saying you cannot harm other people. And in Washington State, we're seeing organized groups forming to abuse the protest system against our energy infrastructure. And that's really where this bill started from. We're taking the next level. Would it apply to a Trump protest? If they take it too far, it would apply to them.
And what is going too far? How would you define that?
It's economic disruption. If you are, I'll give you an example. So in 1994, the U.S. Congress passed a bill about health clinics that said you have a right to protest a health clinic, but you cannot bar physically people from going into the health clinic. So we take that same model and apply it to these protests. You cannot do harm to other citizens in your protest. You can protest, wave the signs, do what you want, but once you cross that line and harm other people, that's where this type of legislation would come into play.
Senator, real quick, I want to be fair and balanced and say that the ACLU in Washington put out this statement, quote, "We're already concerned that some of its loose terms appear to be targeting civil disobedience as terrorism. That's a kind of excessive approach to peaceful protests that our country and state do not need." Real quick here, I'll give you 20 seconds. What's your response?
Yeah, not the case. So they use the example of the civil rights movement in the South and the lunch counters. Under my legislation, I encourage that. People should go and protest in the way they did in the South at the lunch counter. They're not harming people. They're exercising their civil rights in that situation.
Okay,
but what they're doing in Washington State now is taking it too far.
State Senator Doug Erickson, we appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks for being
here. Certainly some massive
over in Bedminster, New Jersey at Trump National Golf Course. Bringing people in, they get their time, they get their interview. They're going to find out they're not getting a job, or they're getting
you're hired or you're
hired
fired.
Or not. Yeah.
But he is listening to everyone, including Mitt Romney, if you remember, during the campaign. Not only didn't support him, but really went out on a campaign to get him out of running for president, making sure he wasn't the nominee. But now they are sitting down together. They are breaking bread.
Yeah,
and I think this says a lot.
Called him a fraud.
He did. And I think this says a lot about Mr. Trump, though, and his ability to say, you know what? I am now going to be the next president. This is going to be a tough job. And you know what? I want to win. I want to be the best at this job. And to be the best, you've got to talk to all people, even if you don't agree with everything they say. Even if they've called me a phony, Pete, and everything else.
Of course, which is why Mitt Romney today, when he shows up, is coming hand in hand, right? I mean, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. Mitt Romney miscalculated, got it wrong, and did lose when he ran. Now, though, Trump is being gracious. And this doesn't surprise anybody when you talk to folks that have known Donald Trump for a long time.
He did it with Ted Cruz.
He wants to reach out. He wants consensus. He wants to be successful. And that means working and talking to former rivals.
I would love to be flying that wall, though, wouldn't you?
Yes. Now, we were hearing grumbling in the media about a lack of diversity. In addition to Mitt Romney, you've got Michelle Rhee going there to Bedminster, New Jersey today. Yep. She's an Asian-American woman who, of course, ran the schools in Washington, D.C., got a lot of credit for that, also kicked up some controversy. She could be Education Secretary. Betsy DeVos, a big Republican fundraiser. General James Mattis, I think you called him Mad Dog.
Mad Dog Mattis. Oh, every Marine out there.
Only Pete can call Mad Dog, Ed. We're going to stick to Mad Dog.
A lot of people do. A lot of people do. No, I mean, potentially for Secretary of Defense, you've got Todd Ricketts. I mean, a long list of people that will be going through Trump's New Jersey golf course today and tomorrow, because as he has said, he tweeted recently, I'm working all weekend to form this cabinet. It's so interesting to watch the mainstream media call this process disarray. We did a segment earlier. Donald Trump is ahead of where Barack Obama was. In fact, David Axelrod tweeted saying, by this time in 2008, we hadn't made
when
any
David Axelrod is saying, lay off the president-elect, you know that the media's gone just a little too far.
But also, what else do you want? He has hasn't done this before. He's getting into the most important job you could have, arguably in the world. He's wanting to get this right. Why not be patient about it? Why not meet with everybody, figure out what works? I've heard from my sources in the Clinton campaign that she already had the whole administration figured out. People already knew what their jobs were. I think people find this refreshing about Mr.
Because
Trump.
there has been this media narrative in the last couple of days. You make an amazing point here, because there's been this narrative, well, Donald Trump failed to prepare for the transition. And what we hear from people inside the Trump camp is he kept saying he's superstitious and did not want to get ahead of himself. He said, we have to win before we actually form a government. The Clinton camp was doing the opposite. They were ordering fireworks. They were putting a government together. Then they were canceling both of them.
People already bought homes in McLean, Virginia, thinking this was over. This is our future.
On that. It's pretty interesting. Jeff Sessions has
one of the big picks, I mean, a huge pick's Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has been a loyalist of Donald Trump from the very beginning. Very strong.
First one to stick his neck out, really, on Capitol Hill.
On Capitol Hill, in the Senate, put his name on the line. Also a huge proponent of enforcing our immigration laws and preventing illegal immigration. So a signal to conservatives and those who might be concerned that he would be hedging on these issues. You put someone like Jeff Sessions in there for Attorney General, and you're setting the tone that we're serious about what we say.
Yeah, but Democrats are going nuts, Ed. They are calling him a racist. And the media is going nuts as well. Watch this.
Senator Jeff Sessions has accepted Trump's offer to be his AG, but he will now face questions about his record on civil rights.
But he has been dogged with decades-old allegations of racism.
So there are fundamental concerns among Democrats about Jeff Sessions and sort of how he would tackle some of these issues, racial issues, issues of hate crimes.
If you're going to get a couple of loyalists that have said some crackpot things in the past, you sure as hell better have some very steady hands at state, at defense, and at Treasury, or this goes into a full-blown meltdown.
Now, well, I will say to Joe Scarborough's point there, we should not sugarcoat that Jeff Sessions said a lot of controversial things many years ago on race. It contributed to the fact that he was blocked from getting a federal judgeship. Now, it was a long time ago. He's been in the Senate. He has a record that can be scrutinized. Those comments should be scrutinized. All of this is going to come out.
And
but the media is leaving out a lot of details about what he actually did as Attorney General in Alabama and what he did as a U.S. Senator.
That's right. It's always words versus deeds. And in deeds, it says that the U.S. Attorney General in Alabama, he filed several cases to desegregate Alabama schools because it is a very diverse state in Alabama. He also led the prosecution of the son of the senior Klansman and not only put him in jail, but made sure he was in he got the death penalty for killing a young black child. So this is someone who, when it has mattered, has gone to the line in a way that has nothing to do with racism. It's the way the left works. Well, don't deal with policy, impugn the motives.
See, when you get spanked at the polls, that's what happened last week on Election Day. When the Democrats have nowhere else to turn, they've got to nitpick somewhere. They've got to find something they can attack.
But Abby, I heard in the campaign over and over, when they go low, we go high. What happened to that?
Point.
That philosophy has been turned on its head.
We're going to keep playing that.
With Jeff Sessions, let's just go low, 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 low. Let's go as low as we can go. That's what they're doing.
Such thing.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Will they debate him? What will those sessions look like? Will they be name-calling exercises, or are they going to actually talk about what will your immigration policies be, or how are you going to deal with illegal immigration? That's a conversation worth having. It's a problem that exists.
You mentioned Sessions' record in Alabama, and the best place to look for how someone is respected or how they're thought of is where they actually serve and what they've done in the past. And if you go to Alabama, he has won by large margins every time he has gone out for office. He's someone that is well respected in that state. He's someone, as you mentioned, Ed, that has worked side by side with Mr. Trump, helping him elect or pick Mike Pence, who you could argue is probably the best decision that Mr. Trump has made so far.
It's a tough early decision to make that change atop the transition team because you want the people there. This is also happening, I should mention, to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who's not up for nomination in the Senate, but they're calling him an Islamophobe and all of this because of clear-eyed comments he's made about radical Islam. This is the way they're going to try to impugn Trump's scheme from the beginning.
Jeff Sessions, somebody who, if he is confirmed by the Senate as Attorney General, one of the first big decisions he's going to make is what happens at the FBI. Does James Comey?
And you know what he said about some of those things. He's been very critical of James Comey. He's been very critical of how they've handled that. And
does
I think
he move
could come
forward
down
with
hard.
this investigation of the Clinton Foundation? Does he reopen things and say, wait a second, what really happened with that server and the classified information? Or do they say, look, the Trump administration is going to turn the page on that and focus on their agenda?
So this is a busy time. Lots of decisions being made in New York and New Jersey. So you know what Mike Pence deserves, the vice president-elect? Maybe a night on the town.
With his family?
Maybe a Broadway play, maybe?
Maybe a Broadway show.
There's
working
Hamilton
pretty hard.
Is really good.
It's from what I hear, a fantastic play.
I've been to this play. It's hard to get into. I don't know how I was.
It's a free country, and especially when you're talking about Hamilton.
Not when you're paying. When you're paying $1,000 for some of these
you
tickets.
First Amendment right to say what you want, but you're right as well. You know, you pay several $100s or more to go to this show. You're not expecting a lecture.
I paid for a show, not a political.
I'm not even talking about Mike Pence. I'm talking about the other people in the crowd.
Sure.
You know, why did they pay? You know, you're right. Pay for a lecture, but also we didn't mention that on his way in, there's video online of Mike Pence being booed. There were some people cheering. We should be fair and point that out. Other people booing. He's the vice president-elect. What happened to you? You're the vice president for all the people. People are.
You mentioned all the people. Can I just point out that Hamilton, and as I said, it is a great production, but they were under fire. I reported this for Fox and Friends a few months ago, where they were holding auditions, but for anyone that wasn't white.
So okay.
You can't be white in a
racial test.
So you could only audition if you were someone of color, because obviously they promote that on the show, but to discriminate apparently against white people, which a lot of people found offensive, and I just find that you don't want to turn away anybody. If that is their message, if they're honoring Alexander Hamilton, I mentioned Hillary Clinton, who she went to this production a number of times on the campaign trail, and she got a standing ovation, and they were hugging her behind stage. You could see this photo here, just how different they responded.
People
to these different
are
politics.
sending in comments. Look at Facebook right now. Bill posted this. If they want to make a political statement on their time, that is fine. However, why should anyone, especially Mr. Pence, pay to be lectured?
That's right. And Gina tweeted, "That's pretty sorry. If I were going to New York City for the holidays, that would be one show I'd miss seeing."
Mike tweeted this one. Actors need to stick to their make-believe world. # we don't care what they think.
That's exactly right. And that speech as well is exactly why Donald Trump won the election. People don't want to be preached to by elites in a distant capital. They're famous because they dance around on stage. Yeah. You're not going to tell me my politics. You're not going to help me.
The only good that comes of this? People are writing us saying they're going to cancel it. They want the ticket. I might actually be able to get tickets now.
It'll be more
Be
affordable.
careful. You might get a lecture at it if you're cited.
But as you said, the best revenge sometimes is actually just winning.
Yeah.
And that's what Mr. Trump did.
And wasn't Alexander Hamilton who put the Electoral College together? So there you go.
Not gonna take away my shot as one of the big songs. All right, we do have some other headlines to get to now. Starting with a Fox News alert: at least 4 people killed instantly when a medical transport plane crashed right into a parking lot, exploding into a fireball. One of those passengers, a heart patient, being flown from northern Nevada to the University of Utah hospital. Several cars exploding on impact, forcing evacuations at a nearby senior living complex. No other injuries were reported, and the cause of this crash is still being investigated. Congressman Danny Davis and his family are in mourning today after the Illinois representative's 15-year-old grandson was killed in a home invasion. 2 suspects forcing their way into the family's Chicago home overnight. Police saying people were fighting over sneakers when someone shot the teen in the head, killing him. Police are still searching for the suspects. That is so sad. Well, I bet you never thought you'd hear this. House Republicans begging Nancy Pelosi to remain as minority leader, thanking her for toxic comments that she made, like this one about Obamacare.
We have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
All right. Well, the NRCC officially endorsing her, saying her leadership would be disastrous for Democrats after Republicans picked up nearly 50 seats in the House since 2010. She's being challenged by Ohio Representative Tim Ryan.
Oh, boy.
Saga continues.
That's right. Democrats say they're ready to work with the Trump administration, but can they find issues with common ground? Texas Congressman Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, weighs in next.
And
Democrats on Capitol Hill say they're ready to work with the Trump administration.
We're ready to stand shoulder to shoulder with Republicans, working with soon-to-be President Trump on issues where we agree. But we will go toe-to-toe against the president-elect whenever our values or the progress we've made is under assault.
So they want to work with him, but they also want to go toe-to-toe and fight him. What's it going to be, and how do you strike that balance? Here to weigh in is the Democratic Texas Congressman, Henry Cuellar. Good morning. We appreciate you joining us.
Well, good morning. How are you?
Where do you see that line? Because I hear Chuck Schumer, the incoming Senate Democratic leader, say we want to work with the president-elect, and then I hear he and some of his colleagues suggesting that Jeff Sessions, the potential attorney general, is a racist. How is that fair?
Well, certainly we got to give President-elect Trump an opportunity to present his priorities and then look at the details. I mean, I think there's a lot of topics that we can work on, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's tax reform, energy independence, a lot of us have been talking about this for a long time. So it's a matter of can we sit down and negotiate some of those things? Now, on the Senate side about the nominees, that's something that the Senate will have to decide. But I always say, you have elections. After the elections, we go to our job, and that is we represent not only Democrats, Republicans, but we got to represent the American public, and that's the number one interest we got to look at.
So, Congressman, let's get specific for our viewers then. You're in Laredo joining us live, and I wonder, in Texas especially, along with a lot of other states, border security is a big issue. President-elect Trump talked about the wall. Can he get that wall through Congress, number one, but do you expect him to have a path to citizenship or something that he has to give on?
A lot of us have been working we live in the border, we drink the water, we breathe the air here, so we understand the border very well. We understand that we want to have a secure border, but it's how you secure the border. When you talk about a wall, quite honestly, a wall is a 14th century solution to a 21st century problem. Look at the Great Wall of China, the Berlin Wall. There's so many examples in history. If you put 1 mile of technology, it will cost about $1 million per mile. You put 1 mile of fence, and it will be about $6.5 million of cost, taxpayers' dollars. So we just got to secure the border in a correct way, right mixture of personnel, technology, cameras, sensors. But at the same time, let's not only play defense on the 1 yard line. Let's work with our neighbors to the south and help them do more to secure not only our southern border, but the southern border that they have with Guatemala.
And the president-elect has said he's going to put pressure on Mexico. I'll give you 30 seconds. What about sanctuary cities? We hear folks like Mayor Rahm Emanuel in Chicago saying, hey, this is a sanctuary city. It's alive and well. Look what happened to Kate Steinle in California, a sanctuary city in San Francisco. She was killed, and the illegal immigrant was getting away with it. How do you square that?
Well, first of all, sanctuary cities have been talked about since the 1980s. So first of all, we have to have the right definition. What do we really mean by that? Criminal aliens, I think they're the first ones that should be deported, and that's what we need to focus on. Priority one, persons that are a threat to our security.
Henry Cuellar, Democratic Congressman from Texas, we appreciate you joining us. Have a nice weekend with your family.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Coming up, here's a headline you won't see in the mainstream media.
Our good friend, James Rosen.
Great to be
Welcome
with you.
Welcome to the couch.
Thank you, my friend.
How did we get so lucky this morning?
Well, I'm the lucky one.
They let you out of the swamp and let you come up here.
Yes, we drained the swamp, and here I am, flush to the surface.
James, leading up to the election, there was all this talk about how the Republicans were, helplessly split, and Donald Trump was going to have a landslide loss, and the Republicans would have to pick up the pieces. Now you see the Democrats have this heartbreaking loss for them, and they've got to pick up the pieces, and Nancy Pelosi has a challenge out of nowhere.
Yes.
And a lot of people are not talking about it. There's a divide in the Democratic Party about the future.
Probably Nancy Pelosi's leadership of the Democratic caucus in the House is not as endangered as it should be. All three of the top leaders for the Democrats in the House are 76 or 77 years old. She's been the leader for 14 years. The Democrats have suffered large losses under that leadership. The challenger, Representative Tim Ryan, Democrat of Ohio, represents the Rust Belt region that the Democrats need to start reconnecting with. But she comes from California, and she's excellent at fundraising.
Right.
Mr. Ryan's going to have to get 100 out of 198 votes in that closed-door session, and it's not clear he has that
You brought
mojo.
up a good point. Pete and I have been going around to some of the diners around the country and getting a sense of how the voters are feeling and ultimately how Mr. Trump won this election. And what he did was, as you mentioned, he was able to win over working-class Americans. I was just in Scranton, Pennsylvania, a place where Joe Biden was born, where Mr. Trump did very well there. Is Nancy Pelosi part of that problem, and does she need to be removed for the Democrats to ultimately figure out where they got it wrong and to move forward?
I mean, first of all, when I go to diners repeatedly, I gain weight. I don't know what
How does Abby do it?
They work us too hard.
It all goes to the hair. I think certainly Democrats ought to be looking very hard at their leadership because, look, you can drive for significant stretches across the country now and not enter a blue-controlled state. In addition, part of the problem for the House Democrats is the Republicans now control majorities of the governor's mansions and the state houses, and that only worsened in this cycle for the Democrats, and that controls redistricting, and that controls the House races, and that's why Barack Obama was 2 years out of the Illinois State House when he challenged and defeated Hillary Clinton in 2008. When you're not producing that state-level bench, then you're not going to have a significant figure to come forward.
But this battle there and battle at the DNC, it's ultimately a battle for the heart and soul of the Democrat Party. I mean, they had their system sufficiently rigged so that Bernie Sanders couldn't be there. Where do they break? Do they go hard left for an Ellison and a Bernie Sanders, or are they able to maintain control in the middle?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things you can look at in this country that tell us that this is a center-right nation, generally speaking. And I think the Democrats are going to have to reconnect, as we said, with working-class folks. Whether it's a more aggressive liberal approach that Bernie Sanders favored, I'm not sure that's going to work for them.
Well, you've got a book that's been already on the New York Times bestseller list for a couple of weeks. Congratulations.
4 weeks, not a couple, 4 weeks.
Be accurate. Boy, talk about ungrateful.
Tell us about the book, though. It's called The Torch Kept Lit.
Yes, A Torch Kept Lit, Great Lives of the 20th Century. I edited this volume. It was written by William F. Buckley, Jr., and it has eulogies, about 50 of them, that he wrote or delivered for the great, the towering, and the evil figures of his time. The presidents, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, JFK, from whom the title is taken, people like Johnny Carson, John Lennon, Elvis Presley, Jerry Garcia. One of the recurring themes in this book is friendship. Buckley nurtured friendships over many decades' time, and I dare say, for those of our viewers who give A Torch Kept Lit as a gift, whatever the occasion.
Here you go.
Your publisher
will find that it actually serves to deepen friendships. You can go to atorchkeptlit.com. atorchkeptlit.com.
One of the great lives of the 21st century, James Rosen.
Far more prolific than anyone knows. Most people know. James, you're fantastic.
Thank you.
And James, you're one of our friends.
Oh, all right. Can I stay on the couch?
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
We've got some other headlines to turn to now. The book is now closed on the Trump University lawsuits. The president-elect agreeing to settle out of court for $25 million. This over claims that it failed to provide quality real estate educational courses. The settlement includes no admittance of wrongdoing, and Mr. Trump claims he's happy now to focus on his upcoming presidency. And a desperate
team forming its national security roster with 3 high-profile picks. The president-elect tapping Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions for Attorney General, Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo at the CIA, and retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn as well.
Yeah, here to tell us what these choices mean for Trump's overall national security vision is the author of Defeating Jihad, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Doctor, thanks for being here this morning. Good to see you.
Thank you, Abby. Glad to be here.
I think the big question out the gate here that people are wondering and most concerned about is what direction do these choices tell you about where we're heading, especially when it comes to fighting terrorism, something that Mr. Trump has been very strong on throughout his campaign?
Well, anybody that elected for Donald Trump because they're concerned about the last 7.5 years and the attacks of Orlando, San Bernardino, New Jersey, New York, you can rest easy now. The grown-ups are in charge. The adults are back in the White House, in the cabinet. Just look at these amazing picks. We have a general who was the most senior military intelligence officer in the United States, a man who was part of JSOC, our top-tier special operators, the Joint Special Operations Command. It's Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, a man who is a soldier's soldier. We've got the former Attorney General of Alabama, a man who has been a staunch supporter of Donald Trump's vision for a secure America from the very beginning. And then we've got Representative Pompeo. Just look at his CV. Just Google his CV. First in his class at West Point, #1. Then he's the editor of the Harvard Law Review. And then he goes on to be part of the House Intelligence Committee and stands up to the plate after the disaster of Benghazi that was caused by Hillary Clinton and the feckless policy of the Obama administration. So this is an amazing start for America.
Dr. Gorka, I want to press you on that very point with Congressman Pompeo. I think you're right. The Democrats are mad at him, not based on his credentials, but because he's a partisan Republican. He's entitled to. He's a member of the House of Representatives. And he went after that investigation on Benghazi and was very tough, but I think fair in a lot of the hearings in pressing Hillary Clinton. My broader question, though, I hear what you're saying, that you agree with his questioning and you wanted to get to the bottom of Benghazi. Fair enough. But what about the idea of a partisan Republican or a partisan Democrat in a future administration running the CIA, which, as you know better than anyone, should be non-political?
Yeah, these are different jobs. So, you know, you remove yourself from the party political activity that you have on the Hill, and you become a part of the federal government. We've seen this done thousands of times before, whether it was Bill Clinton appointing a director or a cabinet member, whether it's George W. Bush. These are, different jobs, and you recuse yourself from party political statements, and you do the job of director of CIA or the Attorney General.
Right.
This is how we do federal government.
Right. When you think about national security, you think also Secretary of State and how important that pick is going to be for Mr. Trump. I mean, names have come about like Mitt Romney, for example, who, if you look at past things that have been said in their history, they don't really see eye to eye on our role in the world, particularly when it comes to Russia. How important is it for him to find someone as Secretary of State that he is right in line with?
Look, let me start with this. Who in America, out of 330 million people, if I'd said to them last week that Donald Trump was going to meet with Mitt Romney for a cabinet position, who would, I mean, look, this tells you there is no playbook. Don't judge Donald Trump by what prior president-elect has done. This, I can tell you, having met with members of the transition team, there is one question. Whether you're on the bottom, whether you're a cabinet member, there's one question. Do you understand that Donald Trump isn't here to dicker around the fringes? We are not here for incremental change. This is getting America back on track. And if you share that vision, whether you're the future Secretary of State or whether you're some lowly GS7 employee, then you can be part of the team.
That's why we enjoy having Dr. Sebastian Gorka on. He cuts right to the heart of it.
Yep, and
Get past the BS and the politics. We appreciate having you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Always a part of our team.
You too.
Good to see you, sir.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Coming up, Geraldo Rivera reacts to President-elect Trump's team, some of the early picks.
That's going to get spicy.
Why he says Mitt Romney is his best bet. I suspect that might hurt.